from Abraham or from Adam all the way to Jesus in that bloodline as the Son of Man and as the King of the Jews to show all that. I think it's kind of neat and important to see just who Jesus is. And when I started back when I started going through the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and I had shared with you guys about Dr. Stanley when I was listening to some of his, and it says, if you want to know who God is, read about his son. If you want to know about his son, read his words. Read the red words. That's his son. If you want to get a bigger picture of Jesus, read those red words. So I started doing that and going back and just kind of reading the Gospels, trying to get to know Jesus a little better, which in turn helps to know God the Father. But it is important to know the history and the ancestry of Jesus. And like I said, I know a lot of times we just kind of buzz over it and skip over it, but it is important. And not only, but out of all of that, whether he's a king of the Jews or he's a servant to all, or whether he's the Son of Man, I think John captures the most important aspect of it, and that he is the Son of God. And John says that he was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And just to understand that and to know that, and then you get to read all the red letters that he has, and that he, like the words that come out of his mouth, of Jesus' mouth, not something that Matthew or Mark or Luke or John just kind of added in there or whatever, but these are the words that Jesus actually spoke, and they wrote them down, and that's why they're in red. And that is very important to us as Christians, to get to know Jesus. And Jesus said, if you know me, you know my Father. Amen. So if you ever get to that point where you're wondering who God is or what he is, just read the Gospels and read the red words again. I think Ronnie even has a song talking about the red letters. So I just wanted to share that with you. It's nothing probably that y'all probably knew all that. But anyway, someone else, a thought, comment, something you want to share with us? Well, let's go to prayer. Let's take prayer requests then. Anywhere, it doesn't matter. Ruby?
Remember Charles, he goes to the doctor tomorrow.
All right.
Remember me and my family, remember my two brothers, and my mother, and Bob Hanshu, and continue to take it forward.
And my mama called and lost my family. The twin had some blood work done this week, and they were a little out of whack, so just pray for them that they can straighten back out. I just thank the Lord for his big blessing. I thank him here and sing that song. That's one of the songs that I remember,
those with unspoken prayer requests, those that haven't. Those are one, two, come gather around. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Sure. Yeah.
We're all on the same path, amen?
Yeah. Heavenly Father, we come to see you before you.
Gracious Heavenly Father,
Well, good evening.
Good evening.
Does everyone have a Bible? Pages or digital? One way or another. Might want to turn me down just a little bit, Rob.
Yes, sir.
I have trouble being soft. So if anybody needs a Bible, we have them scattered. There's several up here. Just wave me down. We've got a bunch of scriptures that we want to go through tonight, and it'll make sense once we do that. But we're just going to start out doing that tonight. And the fortunate part, if you want to go ahead and turn, we're going to start back in the book of Exodus. So we are starting in the Old Testament. Most of this here in the beginning part is going to be the Old Testament. And what it does, we're not going to bounce you around like left, right. It starts at Exodus and it works towards the New Testament the entire way. Okay? So a lot of times this scares people to death whenever we start doing this, but because you think, I'm not going to be able to find this. Yeah, we are. We just kind of work through this systematically. And again, we're only going to pull up 2 or 3 verses in a bunch of places here. And hopefully it will make sense. All right. Is everybody with me at Exodus? Exodus chapter 34, verses 6 and 7. We'll start over here with Bruce. We're going to work our way around through these verses.
And the Lord passed by before him and proclaimed, the Lord God merciful and gracious, long-suffering, and abundant in goodness and truth.
Keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgressions and sin, and that will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children and upon the children's children, unto the third and to the fourth generation.
All right, let's jump up to the book of Numbers. Numbers chapter 14. Numbers chapter 14, verse 18.
The Lord is long-suffering and of great mercy, forgiving iniquity and transgression, by no means clearing the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the third and fourth generation.
All right, Nehemiah. And if I shout out one of these and somebody took it out of your Bible, let me know. You ever feel like that? You start looking for these books and you think, okay, who took it out? Nehemiah chapter 9. And to those I meant to say this whenever I got started, to our online audience tonight, I hope that you jump back on with us. We're guessing we had an internet glitch earlier and it kicked everything off. And so we were able to get things started back again about 25 till 8. So y'all missed Gary singing. Sorry about that. All right, Nehemiah chapter 9, verses 16 and 17. Psalms 86. Oh, finally, one we can easy find, right? Psalms 86. I see a lot of times whenever we're sharing verses like this, I put bookmarkers in place. See, I didn't do that tonight. There's too many of them. I don't have that many bookmarkers. Psalms 86, verse 15.
But thou
Still in Psalms, chapter 103.
The Lord is merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and increasing in mercy.
He will not always chide, neither will he keep his anger forever.
All right. Still in Psalms, chapter 145.
The Lord is gracious and full of compassion, slow to anger, and of great mercy.
The Lord is good to all, and his tender mercies are over all of his works.
All right, we're going to challenge you a little bit now. Book of Joel, one of them little prophets. So whoever's next, hang on just a second. Let's make sure everybody, these little prophets are a little harder to find, so we want to make sure everybody gets there. Joel chapter 2. Okay, if you're still turning, Joel is right after Hosea and before Amos.
Therefore also now saith the Lord, turn ye even to me with all your heart, and with fasting, and with weeping, and with mourning.
And rend your heart and not your garments, and turn to the Lord your God. For he is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and of great kindness, and repenteth him of the evil. Who knows if he will return and leave a blessing behind him, even a meat offering and a drink offering unto the Lord your God.
All right, so we'll pick back up with you guys. Jonah chapter 4. That's just a few pages over. Jonah chapter 4. There's only one more after this. Sort of.
But to Jonah this seemed very wrong, and he became angry.
And coming to the Lord and said, I pray thee, O Lord, and talk to my son. When I was in my country, therefore I said, on it, I knew that thou art ever God and merciful, but in great kindness and pity.
Therefore now, O Lord, take I beseech thee my life from me, for he committeth for me to die, and then to live.
I'm so, so jump on that.
Verse 4.
Little verse down,
Yeah.
where to be angry.
And then Nahum. Chapter 1, verses 2 and 3.
God is jealous, the Lord revengeth, and the Lord revengeth, and is furious. The Lord will take vengeance on his adversaries, and he reserveth wrath for his enemies.
The Lord is slow to anger, and ready to power, and will not at all quick to hate. The Lord has his way in the whirlwind, and in the storm, and the clouds, and the dust of his feet.
All right, that was a bunch of verses. I didn't count them up, but we kind of, went around the room basically covering those verses. So what, did you notice something that was common in the verses in these different books? Did anything jump out at you that was fairly common? And I won't say in every place that we read, but it came out in a bunch of places.
Slow anger.
God is very slow to anger. So, everybody knows for the last few weeks we've been doing this Bible study on spiritual growth. And anybody who's taught a class, you know that whenever you get these laid out outlines and different things, there's some that you jump into face first, and there's some that scare you half to death. Well, this is one that scares me half to death, is because I'm no counselor, I'm no psychologist, and I'm no authority, but yet at the same time, I recognize, especially in today's world, anger is a problem. And, we see it everywhere. And I'm not talking about just outside the church, we see it everywhere. Anger is something that we all, every one of us, need help with. So the common theme that several of you picked up on there is that God is slow to anger. Doesn't mean that He doesn't get angry, because He does. What causes God to get angry? Sin. Yes. He is full of mercy, and that is part of what, helps that slowness. But the sin is what causes His anger. So, even though that He's merciful, even though that He is slow to anger, the guilty, those that are guilty of sin, they're still not going to get off the hook, are they? There still is going to be a punishment for sin. So again, that's some of the differences that we saw in the verses there were some references being made to the punishment that can come along for those sinners. So again, God is very slow to anger. So now I want us to kind of look at ourselves, everybody. Because again, even if somebody is timid, meek, soft-spoken, doesn't say a whole lot, they still have a blast-off point. Everybody does. Some are just quicker than others, right? But, and this is a question that I'm asking. And again, I'm not looking for an answer. This is a question that we are to think about, think about in our thoughts, just to ourselves at the moment, is what is it that fuels our anger? Okay? So, what is it that sets us off? What is it that just makes the blood pressure go? I mean, I've had co-workers and differing people throughout my past. They make a joke, is that whenever, and I guess it still happens, but I don't see my face. I don't know. Whenever that I get upset, I'm like a thermometer bulb. The red starts at the neckline and goes up. And I don't know how many people have told me in my past that they've seen that. They've just seen the red. It just goes up, just like it would in a thermometer. And, so what is it that fuels the anger? So again, that doesn't mean that you blow your gasket just because you get angry or anything like that. But we've all been guilty of that. So, whenever we talk, think, pray about, what is it that fuels our anger? The uncomfortable part that comes along with that is a concept that we make mention very often, is that examination of our own heart. Now, the reason it's uncomfortable is because this is where we want to be. It's not my fault I'm mad. It's Gary's fault. It's Ronnie's fault. It's not my fault. We need to examine our heart. Stop looking around and look within ourselves. Look within our heart. So we need to find the sources inside of us where the anger is coming from. So, and again, we spoke on Sunday night about the Bible, how it is very real, it is very transparent. The Bible does not leave out ugly details in people's lives. It's no different about anger. We see examples of anger in the Bible, okay? Didn't Cain slew his brother Abel because of, he got mad at him. There was some jealousy, but, the anger kindled out. So, but what we learn as that we grow in the Bible, as we grow in our relationship with the Lord, is that we learn how to tame that anger. We learn how to deal with it. Yep, that red may rise from our neckline all the way to the top of our head. And as I got older, the more head that was there was visible, right? But you think about how that anger grows. It doesn't mean that anger just stops happening, but we learn to control that anger. Okay? And that's something that is very, very, very tough for us because, again, we don't want to do that. So, we're not talking about how we respond. We're not talking about emotions. That's not how we're trying to deal with anger. Because, again, sometimes the emotions begin to boil up and slow that down. We're talking about spiritual growth. So what we want to try to deal with is looking at God and His character. As a Christian, we are to become more like Christ, more like God. We are to become godly. All right, now y'all recognize in all these verses a very common theme that God was slow to anger. If I'm going to be godly, I need to be the same way. All of us, we need to be that same way. We heard it in a few places also about His mercy, His grace, the slowness, His love. And we're all thankful for those things, right? If God does get angry, how long does it last? Has God ever got mad at you? How long did it last? But that anger very swiftly turns into the drawing and wanting for mercy and love, right? Mm-hmm.
We show natural anger, and we're trying to go to the level of being like Him. Jesus went through the temple, and threw out a bunch of people buying and selling and doing things that they were desecrating the temple. So we showed a little righteous anger in trying to share if that place, what that was the house of God. That wouldn't call this stuff to be taking place.
But then He went in and He taught. I used to work with a gentleman, and this goes back a few years. And has anybody ever had a boss that absolutely would drive you to the brink of craziness? Okay? I think everybody could say, yes, we've been there, right? And I used to have a boss that was like that. He would absolutely drive you right to the edge. And he was very demanding, but yet deep down he was actually a caring and a good man. But during those times, whenever that he would drive you to the brink, he would drive you there. And there was one day, there were three of us. We were at a meeting, and he kept asking the same questions over and over and over. Not just that day, but it had been the day before that, and the day before that, and the week before that. And I was young then. A little more fire and vinegar then than I do now. And this was my boss, mind you, okay? So he asked the question one more time, and I went over the edge. And I had a legal pad in front of me. And I said, I tell you what, here's what I'm going to do. And I wrote the answer in big letters on that legal pad. And I tore it out and I said, I'm going to make me a bunch of copies of this note right here. And every time that you ask me this question, and I wadded it up and I threw it at him. Hit him right in the chest with it. About the next 15 minutes, he went off. And then he looked at us. He said, let's go to lunch. Flipped the switch just like that. And I was like, inside of me now I didn't say it because I was feeling about this. It's like, I don't want to go to lunch. I'm mad. That's the way we are. Okay? But how that he flipped that switch was just amazing to me because, again, he voiced his anger, but then it was moved on. Of course, the funny part is, after that day, he treated me with more respect after that than he ever did before. So, again, I'm not justifying what I did in any ways because I should have never threw a piece of paper at my boss. Nor should I have, as a Christian, responded in that way as well. So, there were two things that were wrong there. God is slow to anger, and we are ready to go off the deep end. All right? So, let's turn now to Matthew chapter 5. No, we're not going to do a whole bunch of bouncing now. But let's jump up to Matthew chapter 5. And let's dig a little bit deeper into anger. We're running out of time in a hurry. So Matthew chapter 5, verse 21 says, "You have heard that it was said by them of old time, Thou shalt not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment. But I say unto you that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment, and whosoever shall say to his brother, Reka, shall be in danger of the council. But whosoever shall say, Thou fool, shall be in danger of hellfire. Therefore, if thou bring thy gift to the altar, and there rememberest that thy brother hath aught against thee, leave there thy gift before the altar, and go thy way. First be reconciled to thy brother, and then come and offer thy gift." Anger needs to be rooted out. Okay? Anger needs to be pushed out. So, whenever that you look at the word kill, murder, whichever word you want to use for that, there is an anger that pushes to an extreme. Anger, well, remember the word extreme now that we've used for a week or two in a row now. So that word extreme, I don't remember the exact definition and probably should have brought that back up, okay? Outside of the norm or, outside of the bounds that are there. So anger, if it works hard enough in all of our lives, we will eventually get to an extreme. You say, Brother Luke, I've never thought about killing anybody. But I have talked with people before that did think about it. You talk about an extreme, right? That's an extreme anger. Anger will push us to an extreme. Maybe not to murder. Can we murder people with our words? Absolutely. Can anger push us to that point? Absolutely. That anger needs to be rooted out. Killing and murder and all of that, yeah, that should get our attention. And again, those are things that should shock us just a little bit to grasp that thought within us that, okay, yeah, maybe it does need to be toned down just a little bit. Because, as Jesus was teaching here, killing, murder, it's wrong, it's sinful. But he's also saying that if you're angry with your brother, and again, this was now before grace. This is still whenever that sacrifices were being done. And you come and you bring your sacrifice to the altar, and this thing between your brother comes between you. Lay your sacrifice down and go ask for that forgiveness, and then come back and deal with the sacrifice. So you see that anger needs to be rooted out. So now, common sense is going to tell us just because I get angry and upset at somebody, it's not the same consequence if I'd go and murder them. We all know that that's, we know we're talking about two different things here. But as that extreme can come out in our life, Jesus wants us to look at the root of the sin, which is our heart. Okay? So again now, we're talking about growing. We're talking about growth. Have you noticed though over the last few weeks, as part of the growth, we're dealing with some of these things in life that we do struggle with that cause us problems. There was a New Testament scholar. He was an author. He was from Switzerland. And he put it like this. He says that Jesus is eliminating a sharp line between willing and acting. Now, I never heard it quite put that way. So wishing to kill is as bad as killing. So if you think to that extreme, I want to hurt somebody. Have you ever thought about, I want to smack somebody right in the nose? Shame on you. Exactly. That's the growth, right? That's the Lord working with our heart. Those are the things that God helps to take away. So, this new heart, this new life that we're living as a Christian, this is part of the growth process. The anger needs to be rooted out. So, and again, this is talking about an anger that is arising because of sin. Jesus, God, gets mad at sin. There's a lot of things that sets us off and it has nothing to do with sin. It's a problem within inside of us. Okay? And those are the things that we need God to help us with. So, acting out, or acting, I would even venture to call it acting through our anger, can lead to destructive activity rather than God's righteousness. That's kind of one of those does statements, right? Anybody in here a doctor? Lois looked at me like, yeah, right. As doctors, part of their credentialing, they have to take what they call the Hippocratic Oath. Does anybody remember a part of the beginning part? Because a lot of people have heard this. One of the things that doctors have to say as part of their oath, do no harm. Do no harm. Do no harm. That's 3 good words for us, you know it? In our daily life, in our conversations, in everything that we do no harm. Talk about rooting out evil and anger that begins to rage up is to do no harm. I'm not going to make everybody turn here. What's that? No.
I have a question I'd like to ask.
Okay, hang on just one second. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. For the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God. So that anger and that wrath, that does not work the righteousness of God. Okay, Bruce, you got a question? That is, I forget the exact translation of the word, but it is evil speaking.
Where did you read the passage?
James 1, 19 and 20. Yeah, no, that's all right. So, that righteousness of God is what we all need, what we all want in our life. So, quick to listen. Okay, Everybody, who's always ready to, I want to listen to somebody. That's my first goal when I get out of the bed every day. All the day when I meet people, that's the first thing I want to do is listen. Everybody? You know what the Bible's telling us to do, though? Swift to hear. Slow to anger. Got to keep getting back to that, right?
You know, years ago I used to go to meetings and they'd say, "You ain't said much. Why ain't you saying anything?" I said, "I've learned that if you listen, you can learn. If you're speaking, you can learn."
Marriage counseling will be after 8:30 tonight. Nope.
Verse 26 says, "Be angry and sin not.
Mm-hmm.
Let not the sun go down upon your wrath, neither give place to the devil." Just as a little note from the bottom of my Bible, it says that the Bible doesn't tell us we shouldn't feel angry, but it points out that it's important to handle our anger properly. If ventilated thoughtlessly, anger can hurt others and destroy relationships. If bottled up inside, it can cause us to become bitter and destroy us from within. Paul tells us to deal with our anger immediately in a way that builds relationships rather than destroying them. If we nurse our anger, we will give Satan an opportunity to divide us. I was just thinking about this young man down there in Texas, how angry these people must be to want to lash out to the point where they kill people.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, just my assumption on this is that he's been harboring a bitterness and anger inside of him for a while, didn't know how to ventilate it properly. So that when we bottle stuff up like that, it allows Satan to work in our minds and to create more and more and more to the point that we do lash out and we do things that hurt other people.
Amen. That's right. So, that flashpoint, boiling point, going over the edge, whatever phrase that is appropriate for you, you know, that is where the destructive behavior comes out in our life, in our actions, in our words, in our attitude, and it comes out through the anger. So that's why that it needs to be rooted out. There's not a single person in this church that ever wants to be destructive one towards another. Okay? We're Christians. Okay? We don't want to be destructive. Okay? I mean, again, I know I'm going out on a limb whenever I say that, but I believe that as Christians, as God's people, we don't want to be destructive. We don't want to hurt other people. But anger brings it out. Okay? That's what brings that destruction out. All right. Steve, if you would, go to Mark chapter 11, 15, and 16. You'll see why I called him out here on this one. No, you'll see.
Just while he's looking for that, have you ever noticed that there's many other things, say like jealousy, envy, strife, these little things, they all usually result in some form of anger.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're jealous of somebody, we get to the point where we get mad at them for whatever, and we can become angry. If somebody
against principalities. And I can't help but to think about what happened in Texas. The devil's number one goal is to get folks' attention away from God and on him because of all that hurt and that pain and that anger about why, you know. Ain't nobody gonna think about God.
That's right.
You know, they're gonna feel pain and anguish and want to go out and harm people and stuff. So therefore, the focus is off of God and on the enemy.
That's right. All right, Steve, if you would, Mark 11, 15, and 16.
And they come to Jerusalem, and Jesus went into the temple and began to cast out them that sold, and brought in the tables, and overthrew the tables, and the money changers, and the seats of them that sold doves. And would not suffer that any man should carry any vessel through the temple. But then he went on, and he taught, saying unto them, Is it not written, My house shall be called for all nations a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves? So he showed some righteous anger.
Yes, some righteous anger, or the word that I even have here is righteous indignation. I mean, it's come out, okay? If we are ever to respond to a situation in this fashion, you better have some spiritual discernment about you. You better be led by the Spirit of God. If there's any question or any doubt, you better not do it. Okay? This is Jesus. Now, we are obviously trying to become more and more Christ-like, but there were issues, there were problems that was going on in the temple. The temple was being changed into not a temple, basically, I guess is a short way to say that. And Jesus set everything in order at that point. So, you know, He took control of the temple back and put that focus back to where it needed to be. There was not a violent intent that was here. Okay? That was not what was behind it. Jesus was reestablishing the temple for the worship and for the purpose that it was supposed to be. Yeah. So whenever that, parents, have you ever gotten mad at your kid? Of course we have. And again, how long did that last? If you don't have anger issues, it didn't last very long. If it lasted very long, again, I'm no psychologist and I'm no therapist and I'm no counselor, but if it lasted a really long time, you have anger issues and there needs to be help.
Amen.
That help comes from God.
When I was in 10, I had that. Like your mom, they won't say anything.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah. And does that bother you still today?
Yes, sir. And I'm still pushing on it. That's a daily process for me.
Mm-hmm.
I've come a long way.
Yeah.
I've been that way since birth, I guess. It don't last now, no. Back in the day, it lasted long.
The presence of God's Spirit is so important in our life. When we get to that point, just like what he was making reference to there, and you know, Gary's not alone in this crowd here. Most, if not all, can relate to that. Whenever that you just can't even think clearly, it's too far. It's too far. Discernment is lost. Okay? We need God's Spirit. The fruits of God's Spirit need to always be in our life. Even when we're angry. They were with Jesus. Okay? The fruits of God's Spirit still need to be evident in our life. Even when we're angry. All right. This half of a page is your homework. Half of a page. But it's a big half of a page. You can make notes on this. If you want to come back and discuss this next week, totally up to you. I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot. There's a few questions that are in here that are very probing into our own heart. Okay, you see, I've even got yellow marks on mine, and that's what I'll hit those yellow marks next week. But this is what we're calling the personal inventory on anger. This could help us, and even though it's less than half a page, it might take you more than a day or two to actually work through it. Because you might read the first couple of lines and think, I need to ponder on that a minute. And then you go back, and then you go back, and then you go back. But Lord willing, next week we'll start off with this, and I'm not going to say we'll spend a couple of minutes or a long time, just however the Lord leads. Again, we're going to let the Spirit lead on that. But we'll start off with this next week. All right, anything else?
In John, chapter 2, verse 15, I remember something about Jesus actually made a whip when he went into the tabernacle to chase out the money changers. And it says, when he made, when he had made his cords, small cords, he drove them all out of the temple and the sheep and the oxen, and poured out the change of money on the tables through the tables. I just thought that was interesting in how he actually got to the point where he was so frustrated that he made a whip and started tasing people with it. Not only that, but they hung around while he made the whip.
Yeah, I think that was the second time. Because this happened twice. All right. Yeah, we're hard-headed people, I tell you. Stand with us if you would. All right, we appreciate everybody's attention tonight. Lord willing, we will be back here on Sunday morning.